Well, the Edmonton Oilers fall to the Carolina Hurricanes here at PNC Arena by a score of 6-3, as I'm pleased to be joined by Jack Michaels. And Jack, a third period from the Oilers that looked a lot different than the first two periods, one that I'm sure they would have loved to apply to the earlier two.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the theme of things, you know, especially down the stretch in hockey games where Edmonton mounts a furious challenge, late, but it's what transpires earlier in the game that comes back to haunt them. And, obviously Wednesday night in Raleigh, you can't spot the Hurricanes a 4-0 lead. It's just too big of a hole to overcome. And I thought Edmonton had a good push in the third, but in the second period, the Oilers scored a shorthanded goal late, but only 4 shots the whole period. And I think they were outshot, in terms of shot attempts by a nearly 2-1 margin through the first 40 minutes of this game. So that's something that's obviously going to have to change as Edmonton looks to salvage something out of this road trip on Friday afternoon in Washington, because the Capitals are playing great hockey right now. They've won 5 in a row. They've really steadied themselves after a tough start. They're 9-1-1 in their last 11. So the schedule does not do Edmonton any favors. And in fact, none of these teams, Paige, here's the one thing we haven't really talked about, is the Oilers have been beaten up on teams, especially in the second half of the seasons, the last couple years. Now teams they're cognizant of the fact that Edmonton's struggling, and they're pouncing on seemingly every mistake, and they're looking to continue to extend the misery. And so Edmonton, the only favors that they're going to get are from themselves, and I would expect a much better start Friday afternoon, because if they brought what they brought in the third period, to your point, I think it's a different outcome tonight.
Evander Kane used the word redundant in terms of the outcomes of games and what the patterns that they're seeing.
Same old story, right?
Exactly. So what's it going to take as we look ahead to Friday afternoon in Washington to make sure that after that game they don't use the word "it's been redundant"?
Well, first things first, you need saves early. I think if you look at the Oilers' 3-game winning streak, Stuart Skinner provided some saves early in those hockey games where Edmonton didn't get down early, and it just played out differently. Tonight, he just didn't have it. And I'm not laying the blame for the defeat at the hands of Stuart Skinner, as we talked about. The Oilers didn't mount nearly enough in the first 2 periods against first Antti Ranta, and then, they get a backup goaltender in there in Kochetkov and only 4 second-period shots. So, in my mind, what's it going to take is the kind of urgency that's been demonstrated a lot in the third period this year. One thing I'll say is Connor McDavid made a point of saying, look, there's plenty of fight on this team. And he wasn't necessarily saying we're playing well, but he's saying the fight is there, the effort is there, the urgency is there. But Edmonton's got to bring it earlier in games, and they've got to get a couple of saves from whomever starts Friday afternoon. I would not be surprised if Chris Knoblauch goes right back to Stuart Skinner on Friday against the Caps. But whomever the goalie is, I think the one continuous stream in that 3-game winning streak that the Oilers managed were saves early in hockey games. They're going to need that against a Capitals club that's really feeling good about themselves and is one of the biggest surprise stories from a positive standpoint in the league this year.
And the Oilers will look to turn it around against the Capitals on Friday.